Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to the Capital City Soccer Show, your independent source for everything Austin FC. Today, we'll talk about some exciting Austin FC hires and some other fun things going on in MLS. You're also going to hear an interview with Tom Marshall, who covers Liga MX and the Mexican national team for ESPN. So we're going to ask Tom about which El Tri players he thinks are good candidates for a move to MLS and potentially a move to Austin FC. My name is Landon Cottom. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley. Jeremiah, how's it going?
Hey, this is Jeremiah Bentley. I'm doing great, Landon. So we actually had a chance. Well, I guess some of us had the first chance, and maybe some of us with friends in Paraguay who have TV streams have a second chance to actually see Cecilio and Rodney play in Copa Libertadores last weekend.
Yeah. We didn't actually get to see them on the field at the same time, but we saw them both play, which was nice. I was kind of bummed they didn't get on at the same time, but as Rodney subbed off as Cecilio was being subbed on, so we didn't get the chance to watch them play together.
They just barely passed in the night, but hopefully they'll get to play together again soon. Did you expect? We were talking somewhere about how much time Rodney was going to play. Were you surprised to see him come on so early?
How much time Cecilio is going to play?
Sorry, Cecilio, yes.
Yeah, I think it probably had a lot to do with the injuries. They had to make two substitutions due to injuries, and I think that's probably had a little bit to do why he came on. And also, were they still trailing at that point? I don't remember. Yeah, so I think probably like the state of the game and the injuries had a bit to do, but there's actually a quote from the manager earlier that day saying that we're going to try to get Cecilio on for 20 minutes. And that has to do with just like match fitness. He hasn't played a game since I think January was the last time he played. So he just needs to get eased back into it. But I thought Rodney looked, to be honest, like I haven't been super impressed by any of Rodney's matches that I've watched. And I think this one was worse than some that I've seen. He got chances on the ball and just didn't do a lot with it. And then I think the thing that I've normally been impressed with is his defending and kind of tracking back. He didn't look super sharp on that part of it either. On the other hand, Cecilio looked quite good in his part of it. So he ended up with a goal from a penalty, but it was a very well taken penalty. And then I think an assist later on was a really good team goal where they passed it around to several different people, and I think he ended up getting the assist on that goal. So Cecilio looked pretty good. I mean, he's like I said, he hasn't played in many, many months, so I think he'll only look better for Guarani, but we'll get another chance. I think they have another game this coming week, another Libertadores game, so we'll probably get to see him play again, and hopefully we'll get Rodney and Cecilio on the pitch at the same time.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, you'd expect him to succeed too, right? Because with the quality of play the quality of talent that he's playing with, now in the league versus what he's used to. I mean, he hopefully will dominate, the domestic.
He should look good. And I mean, Libertadores is a different thing. Like the next game is against, I think, Palmeiras, which is a good Brazilian team, and so that's a different thing. But playing against Paraguayan competition, he should look like one of the best players on the field for sure.
Yeah, and then you also had the chance maybe a week or so ago, and I don't know if this was on purpose or you just happened to be there, but you got to see the academy dominate against San Antonio too, right?
Yeah, I found out that the academy games were starting up again, so I went out to Leander where they're playing for the time being and saw the U15 team play against San Antonio FC, which I got there and was kind of found some people that I knew and was sitting up on this hill overlooking the pitch, and there's parents around, and was just kind of hearing people talking and asking people questions, and everyone thought that they're saying that San Antonio is like, that's one of our biggest rivals and probably some of our toughest competition that we'll face. And the U15 team ended up winning 8-2, and they looked really good. And I don't know why I was surprised by this. Like, I was very impressed with how good they looked, and I haven't been around youth soccer very much at all, and so I think I was kind of expecting it's a bunch of like 14 and 15-year-old kids, and so it's going to be like disorganized, but it was like a good game to watch, and they were I was really impressed with how good they were. And so when um, you hear the academy staff and Josh Wolf and Claudio Reyna say they want to promote one or two players to the first team every year after the academy established, of course, but they want to promote one or two players to the first team every year. You see a performance like that and you say, okay, that seems like a realistic goal. But yeah, so some of these kids can play.
Yeah, that's cool. And I know you found an article, I think in the Athletic, about sort of the decline of the Minnesota United Academy. And so we have two of the players that have come in from Minnesota United. And were they playing to get the chance to see them?
Yeah, they're good too. Yeah, there's been a big shakeup in the Minnesota academy system. They've kind of decentralized it or instead, I don't really understand exactly how it's working, but it seems like they're kind of expanding. Instead of having one centralized team, they're kind of expanding the network across the state just because of how isolated it is. And so these two kids decided to look for another team to play for and ended up here in Austin. And so, yeah, one of them, I think, scored the first 2 goals. And the other one started at center back and looked really solid. So yeah, I think they're going to be some of our better players on the team for sure.
Yeah, and that's good to hear. Just like to know that there's the ambition of the club, right, and the academy system,
Yeah.
the fact that they can get kids that are out of an MLS academy in Minnesota to come down here when we're just getting off the ground, I think is a really encouraging statement about the club following through and all the things that they say and that we've heard in interviews with people, but that's a real testament to the fact that that's turning into reality.
Yeah, and it looks like with the new we're going to talk a little bit about this later on, but the new kind of youth setup that MLS is following, they're not going to have the territories that they've usually been restricted to. And so if Austin FC ends up setting up a really good academy system, they can scout players from other places. Before it was kind of structured in a very strict set of regions that you can only scout from this area. And now it looks like that's going to be changing. And so if the academy system is as good as we think it's going to be and as well set up as we think it's going to be, then we might get more kids moving in like that who say, I want to go play for that team.
Yeah, that's a great build. And that was last weekend. And then so this weekend on the 19th, they played, I think believe this is on the road. They went to Houston, right?
Yeah.
And played the Houston Dynamo.
Yeah, plays Houston Dynamo academies. I think U15s and U14s won and then the U13s lost their game. But it's really encouraging to see them competing with these established academy systems and competing and then in some cases dominating these established academy systems. So yeah, I'm going to go try to watch more of these academy games. I think their schedule is a little bit up in the air with COVID. So I don't think they're scheduling anything like setting anything in stone too far ahead of time. But I think a couple of weekends from now, they're supposed to be playing back in Austin. So yeah, I'm going to go try to watch as many of those games as I can because these are kids who might one day be playing on the first team.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that level of soccer. And so you mentioned this a little bit. We do have a new system. Of course, it's got a new name and new logo. It's called MLS Next. You want to give a quick rundown about what we know about that?
Yeah, so this is essentially what's replacing the United States Development Academy. And so they announced this structure a month or two ago, and this is just kind of the new brand of it. So MLS Next is what the name of it is, but it's going to have 6 age brackets. So it's going to be U13, U14, U15, U16, U17, and U19. And it's going to be a really big system that covers the whole country. So all of the MLS teams will have teams in this structure. And then they've selected other academies, like not MLS academies, but just other kind of club teams that are proven and produce good players to be a part of this as well. And so it's just kind of a way to give these kids a higher level of competition on a more regular basis, because that's what needs to happen in order for U.S. youth soccer to kind of grow to a higher level. So Austin FC currently has a U13, a U14, and a U15 team. And the plan is to essentially, as these kids age up, they'll become the next age level. And then we'll replace the bottom tier. And so we'll just keep moving kids in. And then like 2 years from now, we'll have a fully formed academy system. And we'll be operating essentially like any other MLS club does. And so it's really exciting to see the growth of it and how much how many resources and how much attention the academy system is getting within Austin FC, especially in this time where MLS is kind of shaking things up and trying to bring the academy system to the next level.
Yeah, and that ties back to the Juan Delgado interview, right, from a couple episodes ago about the need to play against top talent. And I said there's probably 9 teams in Texas, so I assume that they will be playing each other a lot. And the other thing I really observed is that I think the Mountain Dew brand people also designed the MLS Next logo. Have you seen that? I mean, it's just like, for me, it looked like, what if you had an old guy that was going to design a logo that was like hip and different for a bunch of like 18-year-olds, what would it look like? But maybe you have a different perspective.
I hadn't heard the Mountain Dew thing, but as soon as you said it, I was like, yep, that's who did it. Exactly right. Oh man. Okay. So let's move on to some of the exciting Austin FC hires. So the first one we're going to talk about is the new high performance director of high performance, I believe is the title. His name is David Tenney. First, let's answer the question, what is a director of high performance? So in short, it's a sports scientist. So this is a thing that's been around for a while. They essentially manage how a player is physically performing in games and trainings. And so I found an interview with David Tenney, and he described it this way. He said the first question is, what demands are put on players during a game? And then how is their training preparing them for those demands? And how are they responding to that training? And so it's essentially monitoring these players on a very detailed level. So you see the players wearing those like sports bra looking things with a little hump on their back. This is like a little GPS tracker and tracks some of their like vital signs and things like that, heart rate. And that's a lot of what they're using for in-game. And so they're essentially trying to understand how players' bodies are, like the demands being put on players' bodies during a game, and then trying to adapt training to make sure that training is preparing them for those demands. And then it also goes to like coping with fatigue throughout a season. Who's coping with fatigue better than others? Who is not coping with fatigue well? When do you kind of hold someone back? Like, okay, the data is showing us that this person is at risk for an injury, so maybe limit their minutes in this next game or limit their training this week. And so this whole job is going to range from games to training to weights and conditioning to sleep is another thing I heard David Tenney talk about, and then injury management and prevention. And so it's really just making sure that these athletes' bodies are performing at the highest level possible. And so David Tenney has a really impressive resume. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. He came on with the Seattle Sounders in 2009 for their first season and was with them until 3 years ago. And so over his time at the Sounders, he ended up building what most people consider the best performance department in MLS. And he not only didn't just work there, but actually helped to build the whole thing. He then went on to work for 3 years at the Orlando Magic in the NBA. So pretty high level stuff. And then is now coming to Austin FC to help build our department here. So this is something that's not going to be it's not going to be visible on the day-to-day to most fans, but I think it's a thing that has proven in the case of the Sounders to really help and to really improve performance on the field. And so hopefully this is going to be the same case here.
Yeah, I mean, they made 9 consecutive playoff appearances during his time there, and it was he's got a soccer background too. If you go like all the way back to college, right? He played at Virginia Tech. He's got that wonderful combination of soccer experience and know-how. And then like, what was his degree? It was like an exercise science or something. So his credentials are really strong, both on the fitness nutrition side of things, and then also really clearly like soccer's in his blood. And that's really what's near and dear to him. So he's good. It seems like he'd be a great hire and a good get for Austin FC.
Yeah. And from things I've read and heard, he's very highly regarded in this field as well, not just within MLS, but in sports in general. He's a very highly regarded person in this field. So yeah, let's hope that it pays off for Austin FC, huh? Another exciting hire I wanted to talk about is Adrian Healy. He was hired as do you remember what his title was? I don't think I have that pulled up here.
Oh, I looked it up because I didn't even know like exactly what it would fit. Like he's executive something of broadcast. I don't remember right, but I thought
executive director of broadcast is the title.
Executive director of broadcast.
On top of that, he's going to be the commentator, the English language commentator for Austin FC games on TV.
That's the most important part of it. And just like hearing his voice, they've done a couple. I think they've done 2 short videos now with him. One of him introducing himself, and then one with him talking about the stadium, which I think just came out maybe Friday over the weekend. Which that one was like got me so excited. But just hearing his voice is amazing, and hearing that voice and thinking about his reputation. He's one of the top names in American broadcasting, even though he's English. He's been around for a long time. He's done it all. But to hear that in Austin, it's amazing.
Most of our listeners will have heard his voice. They might not know it by name, but what Jeremiah, tell our listeners what he's actually worked like. What has he done? They will have seen him on these competitions.
Or more, what has he not done? Yeah. He's done everything. So he's World Cup, Champions League, Euros, MLS Cups. He's done it all at ESPN. He's been there a long time. I think Phil had an interesting story. And shout out to our friend Phil West for being an officially published on the Austin FC website author now.
Yeah, there's another exciting hire.
yeah, another hire is Phil, because he did the Academy story in this one too. But yeah, so the original plan was for him to commute from Connecticut, like a lot of ESPN personalities do when they're everywhere else. But after he came to Austin, he fell in love with it and decided he would relocate. And he says he wouldn't be doing this anywhere else other than where he is. And then also he will stay involved with ESPN during like international breaks and off season, but he seems really committed to Austin. It's really exciting.
Yeah. This is, if you watch, like, ESPN Plus carries a lot of MLS games, right? And they usually just use the local broadcast. And if you've watched some of those, like, some of the announcers are pretty good, but there's quite a few that just aren't. They're just not very good. And so to have someone who not only is like just above average, but is like one of the best in the country at what he does, it's really exciting. And it's going to make watching these games, if we're not there at the stadium watching them on TV, it's going to really improve that experience for Austin FC fans.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about the ESPN Plus thing that much, but so many of those guys could be minor league baseball, or like they could be any random dude in any city.
And maybe like the minor league baseball guy too.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do all that. And so to get past that and have like a singular voice that's got this kind of long career in history is really exciting. And then so in this last video, he talks about the supporter section and sort of the excitement it's going to bring to it and the drive behind it. And I mean, I've always been bought into that, but like hearing Adrian Healy's voice talk about that makes me, I'm even more bought into it. I'm like, yes, we are, sir. We're going to be as loud as we can possibly be.
So Chris Bills wrote an article last week talking about what the broadcast options could potentially look like. So can you tell us a little bit about what Chris talked about and which of those you think might be good options for us?
Yeah, sure. So Chris, I'm not very familiar with the term linear television, but that means regular TV. He talked about that being an option, sort of streaming, and sort of all the different ways that people consume media. And the point that I think Andy made in the article to him was that they want to be the club for the whole city, and so in that way they kind of have to look at all the broadcast options too, right? Because they want to be the, baby boomer who just watches TV on like over the air television. Like they want to be there for them, and they want to be there for the cord cutter, and they want to be there, for everyone, and get the club in front of everybody. So there's several different ways that they can do that. And I didn't realize until Bill's article, like exactly how many options there are out there. And a couple specific ones he talked about streaming wise were, so the Seattle Sounders are going to be on Amazon Prime Video. They'll be their streaming partner through 2022. LAFC obviously has to deal with YouTube TV. And then Chicago Fire is streamed through ESPN Plus. I mean, a lot of people are streamed through ESPN Plus as a rebroadcast of the local broadcast, but I guess Chicago's is specifically there.
A lot of times that's just out of market though. And so if you're in market, you might be blacked out on ESPN Plus and have to watch it on whatever other option is available. And if you're on MLS Twitter at all, you will have seen people complaining about how they're blacked out in their own market and aren't able to watch games of their own local team. And so this seems like a thing that Andy Loughnane and Austin FC are aware of and are hoping to provide options for us. And I think hiring someone like Adrian Healy to do the broadcast is a sign that they want people to see these broadcasts and want it to be a really good product. So yeah, let's hope that that everyone is able to watch Austin FC when those games are being broadcast.
Yeah, I think you said it the best when you said they wouldn't hire Adrian Healy for nobody to be able to see him. I mean, that's clearly a pretty strong sign of intent. Yeah, so there's that. There's Fox Sports Southwest, which I think anybody that watches any other sports knows. And then there's these traditional stations that maybe have like an English and a Spanish. And Andy did talk in there too about how important it was to both have a real strong English presence and a real strong Spanish language presence both. So I guess maybe, we'll have an exciting Spanish language broadcast hire, at some point soon coming too.
So some other big MLS related news is there have been rumors that DeAndre Yedlin of Newcastle might be returning to MLS. So I decided to do another one of my very scientific polls on Twitter. And I asked, would you be happy with Austin FC signing DeAndre Yedlin as a designated player? And the results were a little bit surprising to me. It ended up 65% of the people who voted said yes, 35% said no. And so I kind of expected to be a bit more split than that. I mean, first off, what is your opinion of DeAndre Yedlin, Jeremiah? What do you think of him? Would you be excited to see him here?
I would absolutely be excited to see him here. And I think, I don't think his ceiling is probably as high as what we thought it was originally, several years ago when he first broke out. But, he's a good player. He's a big name. He's got skills, that to bring to the table. He seems like a real likable guy. I mean, I think he checks all the boxes on what you would want from a player. And I think he doesn't seem, he seems like he would be happy to play that role too. I feel like he's not like a surly or moody guy or somebody's going to avoid the spotlight. And I feel like he would be a good ambassador for the club. Yeah,
I think so too. And you mentioned that his ceiling might not have been as high as we thought it was going to be, but he was a good player in MLS when he was like, I don't remember how old he was when he left, but like 20 years old or something like that. He was a good MLS player then, and he got a lot better during his time in the Premier League. I think especially those years when he was working under Rafa Benitez. I don't know why I couldn't think of that name, but those years playing under Benitez, his defense was always kind of a weak spot earlier on in his career. And I think he became like, it's still not amazing, but he's a decent defender, like good enough to start on a Premier League team for 2 seasons. Or I don't know how many seasons it was, but yeah, if he was already a very good MLS player when he was 20 and he's gotten a lot better since then, he would be a stud in MLS right now. And so I think he would just be a very good MLS player. And so the reasons why I think it might happen is, he, like you said, he's a star. He's a United States national team player. Roger Gonzalez tweeted about a list of kind of logical places for for Yedlin to end up. And he mentioned Seattle, just he's a hometown kid, so that makes sense. He mentioned Cincinnati for reasons we'll get into here in a moment. Atlanta and the Galaxy, and then also mentioned Austin. So Atlanta and the Galaxy, those are just teams who aren't averse to spending money, right? He mentioned Austin because it's a new team. We need a star. And then he something I hadn't thought about is he mentions tax advantages. Texas doesn't have state income tax. And so some of these players maybe would be willing to take a little bit of a pay cut because they're going to be paying less money in taxes and get to keep more of their money. Another thing is, I think Yedlin, you mentioned his ceiling not being so high. I think he probably found his ceiling playing for like a bottom half Premier League team. I don't see him as the type of player who's going to go hunting like that next big European move. I think we know what DeAndre Yedlin is, and we know kind of what his peak looks like. And so I think he's probably a player that's like, yeah, okay, I came here, I did this, it was a great experience, but I'm going to go back to the United States and be like the star player on the team and still make decent money. And I like, that's an okay thing. And I could see him being in that position right now. So as for reasons why it might not happen, I mentioned Cincinnati earlier. So MLS has a lot of crazy rules, one of them being what's called an allocation list. And so essentially for notable American players who are playing abroad, if they decide to come back to the United States, they can't just come and play for whatever team they want to. There's a list of people who essentially get dibs on them. And so Cincinnati is on top of this list right now. So Cincinnati would essentially have to work out a deal with Austin in order to get the rights to buy DeAndre Yedlin. So that's why Cincinnati was on that list. So that's one of the reasons why this might not happen is I don't even know if it's possible for Austin FC to buy that spot. It probably is, but I wouldn't be surprised if Claudio Reyna wasn't eager to use up more of his budget on buying this spot to use a designated player spot on a defender. And he probably would have to be a designated player. And I think that's the big sticking point is a lot of the comments on my Twitter poll were, I would absolutely love him on a TAM deal, but if he's a designated player, maybe not, because again, he's a big star. I think he would be a very good player in the league, but to use a designated player spot on a right back is a little bit worrying. Like maybe we would have buyer's remorse going forward if, okay, we signed DeAndre Yedlin as our last designated player spot, and then there's a striker that looks perfect for Austin FC and we can't get him anymore because we've used all our DP spots. And that's another thing that makes me kind of wary of it. But we've seen the stuff that some of the most recent clubs have done to Miami getting Blaise Matuidi on a TAM deal. So maybe we could get him on a TAM deal. And if that's the case, I would say absolutely get this guy on the team. But as a DP, I don't really know if that would be a good deal or not. But I would be happy to see him on the team though.
Yeah, and I think with so many things, if it seems like the MLS rules are flexible and change depending upon the situation and kind of what's best for everybody. So I wouldn't worry too much about Cincinnati's spot on the list. Like if he's meant to be in Austin, he will somehow magically arrive in Austin through some set of rules and abbreviations that I don't understand that they get him here. But I think he's a really exciting opportunity. And I mean, he's probably the first of the national team players that are a potential. Like he's the one that I'm the most excited about. Like he's the first name I think that everybody could get fired up around that's been discussed at all in terms of a U.S. player for Austin FC.
A realistic one that's under the age of 30. Like right. He's pretty much it, right? So that's a good point. So let's move on to the interview with Tom Marshall. So we're going to talk about some more potential player signings. We want to give a shout out to Sergio Tristan for writing an article for the Los Verdes blog where he talks about a list of Mexican national team players that he thinks would be good fits for Austin FC. And so we lean pretty heavy on this article in the interview with Tom. So thank you, Sergio, for writing that article for us and doing all the research. And also you might think it's a little bit strange for us to have reached out to someone from Manchester, England, to talk about Mexican national team players. But Tom has lived in Mexico for many, many years and has essentially made him worked hard enough to become kind of the premier English language journalist for Mexican soccer. And so he knows a lot, and you're going to hear that in this interview. And so we're going to talk to him about who he thinks would be good fits for Austin FC and kind of the reasons why or why not these players would be good fits. So we hope you guys enjoy this interview. Our guest today is Tom Marshall, who is a soccer journalist covering the Mexican national team and Liga MX for ESPN. Tom, it is a great honor for you to join us. I've been paying attention to your work for a while, so it's really great to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
No, thanks a lot, Landon. Thanks a lot, Jeremiah, for the invitation. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about a few of the Mexican names and some of the stuff going on up there in Austin.
Yeah. So before we jump into the Mexican names, I want to talk about a Paraguayan name. So Cecilio Dominguez, first designated player for Austin FC. He played at Club America from January 2017 to early 2019. What were your impressions of Cecilio during his time at Club America, and how do you expect him to do in MLS?
I mean, I think the impressions, he was super talented. I don't think there's anybody would have any doubt about saying that. I mean, the guy he's got skills, he's got flair, he's got, vision. And, you're looking for an attacking player for an MLS club. And I think he will be successful. I think we've seen a lot of players obviously moving from Liga MX and with experience of Liga MX that have moved up to MLS. And, there are exceptions, but the vast majority do well. And I think that's why we're seeing, MLS, GMs looking more to Liga MX, because I think, I don't know, I mean, you're always looking to kind of to get rid of doubt, to kind of make it the highest percentage possible success rate when you're making these signings. So I think knowing how he did in Liga MX, I think it's almost like how it's going to translate to MLS. What I would say with Cecilio is although he's super talented, I think when he left Club America, I don't think fans were particularly disappointed. I don't think he left that impression that, this guy achieved the maximum his ability could have seen him achieve. There were sparks, there was a couple of injuries, which I think did hold him back as well. So it's not completely his fault, but I would say he didn't quite live up to the expectation and the flashes of brilliance really that they showed at Club America. And I think he played like 58 Liga MX games and, 13 goals, 6 assists. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, that's not a kind of bad ratio, but, I think that, I don't know, I think his ability could make that ratio a lot higher than what he actually did go on to achieve.
Yeah. From what we just looking at stats and like highlights and stuff, you can tell he's a super talented guy, but it's when you look at fan reactions from both Club America and Independiente,
yeah,
it seems like the fans were fairly disappointed or at least underwhelmed by his performances there. So, it's an interesting thing to see, but he seems very excited about a new start in Austin. And, I'm kind of hoping he can have kind of the effect. I don't think he's as good as Carlos Vela, but I'm kind of hoping that by making him a leader on the team and giving him more responsibility, that he can kind of like what Bob Bradley did with Carlos Vela at LAFC, that maybe he can step into that leadership role and kind of take on that role.
Yeah, and I think Claudio Reyna, some of the things that he's been saying about Cecilio as well, I think really important. That they have spoke to him at length, that he's desperate for this new challenge, that the things didn't quite go well for him at Independiente, and there were good reasons for that. You know what I mean? He understands the reasons behind that not going as well as expected, and the same with Club America. And so obviously he thinks that, if you take a player with that kind of talent and you put him into like you're saying, into that leadership role, into that kind of, let's be honest, MLS right now, it is slightly lower level to Liga MX. I'm not saying this, it's a kind of world of difference, but it is a slight step below as well. And he should have success in MLS, given the talent he's got, and as long as he's kind of settled off the field as well. I think that's, I don't know, for a player like Cecilio Dominguez, I think it's massively important. And from his kind of career perspective as well, he's 26, entering his prime. The Paraguayan national team are going to call up players from Liga MX. They're going to call up players from MLS. It's not kind of, an Argentina or a Brazil where really, if you're not playing a Big Five league, then you kind of forget the World Cup. So I think Cecilio, from his point of view as well, he needs to get back into that Paraguayan national team, and he needs to be playing regularly. He needs to be kind of in an environment that is built towards him succeeding. And I think that's another thing that Austin is going to give him as well. Because of the DP system, I think, because of the way that, Josh Wolf and Claudio Reyna are constructing a squad, that's it. You've got, obviously, Rodney Redis, and you've got Cecilio, and now you can start to build around them. But obviously you have to buy players that are going to make the most out of a player like Cecilio, and given the talent he has, I'm sure that's going to be kind of the plan in the next kind of 2-3 months moving forward to the start of the 2021 season.
Yeah, we'll hope so. So we'll get to see. We're recording this interview on a Wednesday, so this game will have already happened by the time this episode comes out. But on Thursday, they'll be playing. Cecilio and Rodney will be playing their first Copa Libertadores game together for Guarani. So we'll get a little glimpse of how they're going to interact on the field. So hopefully that looks like a good thing. Let's jump into some El Tri talk. So. Sergio Tristan, the founder of Pancho Villa's Army, recently wrote an article where he points out 4 Mexican national team players that he thinks are realistic candidates to sign for Austin FC. So I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about some of those players and see how your answers compare to his. So let's jump into it. So the first name that Sergio mentions is Memo Ochoa. So what do you think Guillermo Ochoa's chances of A, joining an MLS team, and then B, joining Austin FC might be?
I mean, I don't think right now Ochoa is going to be moving away. I mean, I think he's only been back at Club America about a year or so, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a massive signing. He's on big money. He's the star. He's the star of the club. I mean, it's one of the biggest clubs on the continent. It's difficult, I think, at this point to get him out of Club America. He's 35 years old. Now, don't get me wrong, he's got a young family. In kind of after the 2022 World Cup, a couple of years down the line, I can see that being kind of more of a realistic window for Ochoa to kind of join in MLS. But then you got to kind of balance the the wages and with the what he's going to bring in terms of the the prestige, the kind of the fame. That, I mean, Memo Ochoa is, if you look down the list of all the Mexican players, it's probably him and Chicharito, over the last decade that are the most prominent, that are the most visible, well known, and popular, really. I mean, he is very popular. He's a good guy. He speaks English as well. So yeah, I'd say not one for right now.
It's like you're really breaking my heart, Tom. I think like everybody, like that's my number one. It's like a fantasy sign. It's almost practically like at the sign Messi level of like unrealistic and like an excitement. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. But for every reason you say, like, I just don't think it'll ever work out too. Right? By the time he'll be 40 by the time he's affordable to an MLS club. And does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's interesting as well. I think going through all the names, I think the other thing we've got to keep in mind is that, we've seen signings in MLS in which clubs have signed players for quite big money, and especially younger players from South America. They've had him in the team a couple of years. I mean, obviously Miguel Almiron at Atlanta's the big, the kind of poster boy for this. They brought him in. He's done amazing. They've won the league. and then they've sold him on for loads of money. And so it's like that's like the perfect package. So it's like, obviously, I think, you got to look at the model and what Austin FC's model is going to be compared to, the Galaxy or something, where the Galaxy, obviously, they don't care. They're in the entertainment business. They've got their owners who are their owners. They sign Chicharito, they sign Ibrahimovic. And, you know what I mean? I think, I think you've got to take that into consideration as well with Austin and what they're going to do. But again, I mean, I think it's going to be an attractive club for for Mexican players as well. It's just finding one at a time, at the right time, right place, right price. I think that's going to be the kind of bundle, because at the end of the day, you have got 3 designated players as well, and obviously you've got Cecilio, who, if he does well in 2 years, would have a sell-on price. Rodney Redis is a kind of the player that, if he does really burst through, then all of a sudden, you could be selling him on for good money as well. And then you kind of, maybe you have a little bit more room then to go and splash a bit of money on that kind of big name, Mexican signing or whatever you want to do,
Yeah, you mentioned designated players, and that's really one of the main sticking points for me with Ochoa, is that it's hard to justify using one of your DP spots on a goalkeeper. And if you were going to use it on one, I mean, he's the profile of guy you would use a DP spot for a goalkeeper on, but it's hard to really justify it. So like you said, it's probably not realistic anyway, but let's move on to the next one that Sergio mentioned. So Andres Guardado, 34 years old, of Real Betis. What do you think about that one?
No, yeah, I like it. I mean, I think the main negative with Guardado is his age, but at the end of the day, he's captain in a pretty big team in La Liga still. He's still doing it. He's still going to be important for Mexico. I think he's going to be at the 2022 World Cup. The experience he brings, the kind of the way he's adapted his game, as well as he's kind of developed throughout his career. And now he's kind of, way over 30. He plays a very different way than he did when he was, 18 at Atlas and flying down the wing. And so, I like Guardado. I think he's been tempted by MLS before. He's on record saying that he's come really close. I think before the 2018 World Cup, he was very close to joining MLS, and he basically made the decision that, I've got a World Cup, I want to stay in La Liga at least for a little while. I think the thing with Guardado is, and why he hasn't come to MLS yet, and why I don't think he's kind of there yet, is that I think his family is just really settled in Sevilla. He's one of the capitals of the Betis team. He's one of the, not capitals, the captains, one of the captains of the Betis team. And I don't know. I mean, I just think he just really appreciates that kind of that level that he's reached through a lot of hard work, because he's, this isn't a kind of Chicharito or an Ochoa that necessarily always had that kind of, that kind of star glow around him. I mean, Guardado's grafted at PSV. He's grafted in the second division in Spain with Deportivo La Coruña. I mean, he's a guy who was he's for me, he's trying to squeeze every little bit of what he can from his talent, and I think he's got to be applauded for that. But yeah, I think there does come a time as well where his family's from Guadalajara, his wife's from Guadalajara. You look at kind of the distances between somewhere like Austin and a flight to Guadalajara is 2 hours or something maximum, and you think, it's just a question again of when. I don't think it's going to be during this season. I mean, maybe at the end of the season in La Liga, and he just says, you know what, that's it. I'm going to go. I'm going to go to MLS. Or he's always said he wants to retire at Atlas as well. But I mean, we'll see about that, because Atlas is a tricky club. It's a tricky club, and it took Rafa Marquez a long time to eventually land there after a few stops along the way. So yeah, I think Guardado is one that it's not ridiculous to say that Guardado could be in the frame. I don't think financially he makes massive money. I think in fact, he's on record saying he could have played in Mexico and made more money than he's earned playing in Europe. I think he said it a few years ago, but it does put it in perspective, the decisions that these Mexican players have to sometimes make between staying in Mexico and kind of making a good living, and going to Europe, and you're also making a good living. These guys aren't, living in poverty, but they're maybe making a little bit less money, but with the potential, to go to a massive club and then you make absolutely huge money. And it's interesting as well because now I think you've got MLS in that equation. It's not just a case of Liga MX in Europe. Now you've got, Pulido, you've got Pizarro, you've got, even Fierro and Jurgen Damm and players like that, where MLS now comes into the equation, not just for these kind of superstar players, designed to pull in, Mexico fans, obviously all around the United States. It's now obviously a destination for, that more of that kind of mid-tier level Liga MX player. So yeah, we'll see. I like Guardado. I think he's a top guy as well.
One other thing Sergio points out in his article is that he's had some injuries over the last few years. And so for a player at that age who's had injuries, it's quite a bit of a risk to spend that much money and use a DP spot on that type of profile. So that's something else that would be a little bit worrying. So the next one is something that there for a couple of weeks seemed like it was almost definitely going to happen. And this is Hector Moreno. So he's 32 years old, playing at Al Gharafa. But there for a while, that rumor seemed really hot, and then just kind of disappeared. And so I don't know if that's still in the works, or if it was ever in the works. But what do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a deal that needed to be done right now, to be honest. I mean, what's the rush? I mean, he's already got a club. He's making massive money. I mean, that's why he went there. I mean, I think that's why people go over there. You know what I mean? Established players that are established in Europe, they go over there, and you can't really blame the players because, the guys from Sinaloa, he can, with that money that he's making, however long he stays there, he's going to buy the next 3-4 generations of his family, a comfortable living. So, but you do think with Moreno and reading between the lines, is there a point where he wants to change that lifestyle and he wants to come over from that side of the world, again closer to home, to a city where there is a Mexican community that you can easily get back to Mexico when you need, and I think it's another good shout. I think that it's going to depend on him taking a wage cut as well. I mean, I don't think you can be how old is he now? 33 or 34?
He's 32 now. I'm not sure when his birthday 32. Is though.
Yeah, so again, a defender who's he's a defender as well, so he's not kind of like that player who's gonna go out and grab the headlines. I mean, so I think you got to factor that in, and I think when you look at it and you analyze it, I think it would be up to Moreno to kind of decide, what, I want to go to a club like Austin because that's where I want to be. I believe in the project, and I think my family is going to be happy there, rather than I'm going to go there and make loads of money. And I think that goes for all the players as well, and I've been on a few conference calls with Claudio Reyna, and I think I've interviewed him once as well. And I think it's really important as well. I mean, I know everybody kind of says it, but it's important that the players want to come to Austin and want to come to the club. And I think that kind of deal would be down to Moreno taking that wage cut and wanting to be there. But I'd also say, I don't think it's necessarily dead. I mean, Austin obviously still need a lot of players. And Moreno at a certain point is going to have to decide his future. And I think if you look at the national team situation, there aren't right now too many younger centre-backs. There are a couple doing well. Johan Vasquez, he's doing really well at Pumas. Sepulveda at Chivas, and Cesar Montes at Monterrey. But it's like none of them are at his level yet. But at the same time, if you're Tata Martino and Moreno, he's been in Qatar for the last couple of years, and you're picking that World Cup squad, you know what I mean? That I think you definitely, from Martino's point of view, obviously a guy who knows MLS, I think he'd much prefer Hector Moreno in MLS, especially as a defender, because obviously the attacking talent in MLS is, you got some big attacking talent. So I think Tata Martino would prefer Moreno over there in say in Austin than in Qatar. And I think that might factor in at some point for Moreno as well. But yeah, I think that's a possibility for next, for over the winter or come next spring. I mean, but it's going to depend on Moreno as well.
Yeah, his contract goes through 2022, and so I think what you're saying is true, that it might make more sense later on from a money perspective. And also, again, you have to balance that question of, do you want to use a DP spot on a center back, which I think right now you would have to with the money that he's going to be on. So, complicated. So the last one that Sergio mentions in his article, and who he says would be the best one of these four and would be his pick, is Miguel Layun. So 32 years old, playing at Monterrey right now. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think Layun is, he's a top guy. I think that he speaks English. I think he's also. I've spoken to him before a couple of years ago. After he just signed for Monterrey, and he said he really considered a move to MLS. He was very close to moving to MLS at that point as well. And I think he went the way of Monterrey. Monterrey, obviously, a massive club, and playing in that stadium, and they were going for the CONCACAF Champions League, going for the title. He's won both of those things as well with Monterrey, which I think is important because, I mean, what else can he win there now? And the team's struggling. He's kind of been in and out. So I think from a rounded perspective, I think, he'd be a good signing. I worry a little bit about his age again. It's not, it's not that kind of, it depends which way, Austin want to go in terms of, like I said at the start, do you want to sign a big name in Mexican, or do you want to go that other route and try and kind of also sign players where you're gonna kind of get some money back further down the line? But yeah, I mean, from what I've heard as well, I don't think Layun would be kind of against a move to MLS, and obviously it's not far from Monterrey, not there to Austin either, is it? So yeah, I think he's versatile. He plays in a number of positions. Obviously, like legitimately could play, right back, left back, holding midfield, kind of interior midfield, wing, either wing. So legitimately can play like 6 positions on the field out of the 11.
Which is something that that Reyna and Wolf have said that they really want out of a player is that positional flexibility and kind of ability to do different things. So that's something that might be a positive and for those guys.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think he is a bit old. I was looking at a couple of months ago there was kind of, I think Liga MX put some stats out, and he was like the fastest guy of the weekend or something. And it's like,
wow,
that guy's got some serious pace. Like, and I've seen him a lot of times live, and I've not really captured that he was that fast. I mean, he's obviously not slow, but like that to see like the numbers and be like, wow, Layun is seriously quick. But yeah, I think he'd be, in terms of an off the field as well, he's good with the community. His backstory is pretty incredible. He was diagnosed with cancer not too long ago, overcame that. I think that's kind of changed his perspective on life a little bit as well. Like I said, speaks English, speaks Spanish, obviously. He's got quite a few businesses going on. I mean, he's a really, really bright guy. He's, I don't know, I don't want to say different to the normal footballer or anything like that, but definitely compared to the average Mexican footballer that you interview, he's from kind of a middle class family. He's from a family that have like, he's obviously had a bit of a higher level education than a lot of the footballers, to be honest, in Mexico, because most of them are from really working class backgrounds. Not saying, sometimes that's a massive benefit as well, because it gives you that hunger. And I'm not saying, not being judgmental here or classist, but Layun, you can tell he's absolutely sharp. He's on it. He's got these businesses. And obviously he just brings a wealth of experience, playing in England, playing in Portugal. And I think, if you're looking at it from the perspective of, you guys will know a lot better than me, but it seems like Austin are putting a lot of emphasis on kind of that youth system, that kind of the building blocks, the kind of the local community, bringing kids through. And you imagine, in a city like Austin with the Latino community, with the amount of Mexican American, first, second, third, whatever generation, that someone like Layun would be really good as kind of, to have around the club, to be asking advice about, to have somebody that they can go to and say, hey, what's it like playing in Europe? What do you need to do? What are the good habits that I need to pick up? And so yeah, no, I like Layun. I think the only thing I'd worry slightly about is getting him out of Monterrey, because it can be difficult to get players out of Monterrey. I think we saw with Rodolfo Pizarro and Inter Miami, he went to FIFA. I mean, Monterrey was so angry that they took it to FIFA because of the way they felt Inter Miami went about doing the deal. And also you've seen, I'm not sure the ins and outs, but you've seen Jonathan Gonzalez as well apparently have interest from MLS, and he's not gone. And it's like he's not really playing either So it's kind of getting him out of Monterrey might be the tricky aspect, especially because in Mexico now, I think it's you have to have, what is it? I don't know now because the squads are kind of being enlarged and all that, but I think you can have a maximum of 9 non-Mexican players.
Right. Yeah.
And so the worth of a Mexican player and one with such experience is obviously a little bit higher than maybe it was, before this rule kind of came into force. But yeah, no, I like Layun. He's a top guy, easy to get on with, really bright, and yeah, I'm pretty sure he'd be interested in MLS. It's just the Monterrey side. Can you strike a deal?
Yeah, and to go back to a previous point, I think Austin FC, if they are to sign a Mexican player, I think they're really going to want them or need them to be kind of a big community presence and just someone who can kind of be a face of the team. And I think he's probably more tooled to do that than someone like Hector Moreno would be. Just a bit more charismatic, a bit more just more comfortable talking to the media on social media, things like that. So I think that's another high point for him.
Yeah, definitely. Although I would say Moreno is his English is actually really good as well.
It really is.
Yeah, I've been surprised when I've kind of seen him in mix zones and stuff like that, and yeah, no, he's a really top guy. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying on kind of social networks and stuff like that. Moreno's not the type to be kind of going out there like Layun is, and in front of the media as well. Layun is not afraid to come out and say stuff. I mean, this big story in Mexico today is he's back in the Mexican national team. And that's a story, not because, he's not good enough to be in there, because he's clearly still is good enough. It's a story because last December he said basically that he felt like he'd been stabbed in the back by people within the federation and the squad. Because, I don't know, it's a long story, but basically the players were accused of having a party in New York last September. There was a lot of fallout. They started investigating. A lot of stuff came out about Chicharito, about Layun. Photos were produced. Don't know if they're real or not, but and Layun and then Layun and Chicharito weren't called up for the rest of the year. And so last March, before the whole pandemic, it was kind of a big issue. Is Layun, is Chicharito, are they going to be back, or are they going to be kind of banished from the national team? And obviously Layun coming back this time, and after his comments saying that he had been stabbed in the back, is it's a big story in Mexico for sure.
So outside of those 4 players that we just talked about, are there any others that you think are kind of primed for a move to MLS, or think might just be realistic candidates for a move to MLS?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I think within Liga MX as well. I mean, I think what's happened recently since the World Cup basically is Mexican players have kind of been moving away from Europe a lot of the time. And I think now, like we've seen kind of MLS clubs signing the younger kind of South American players. I think that might be the next thing that we're going to see is kind of MLS clubs looking for the younger Mexican players, and not just Mexican, but the younger Liga MX based players. So you look at somebody like, I don't know. I mean, if you're looking at a DP, it's like Orbelin Pineda or somebody like that who's played now at Cruz Azul. I mean, it's not easy to get these players out because it's going to be expensive. Orbelin is signed for Cruz Azul for a lot of money, and before that, he signed for Chivas for a lot of money. So these clubs need to recoup the money as well. But yeah, I like someone like Orbelin Pineda in terms of like the defensive side. Iran Mier is doing well at Chivas right now. Who else? I mean, I don't know what you guys think. It wouldn't be for me, but Giovanni Dos Santos is really playing much right now. I'm not sure if you'd want him up there, but I think he's taking
him played recently, but from what memory serves, I don't know if I would want him right now.
No, but the Jonathan Gonzalez, and then the kind of middle range. You got a goalkeeper like Raul Godinho at Chivas, who's been in and out. Not always starting, but he's I think he's 24, and he's got future national team potential, and I think that might be the other way of going about looking at it. Rather than going for the big name players, then going for that player that might be a bit younger but can become that star and become that star at a club like Austin FC. Yes, and I think the other thing is like I just touched on then, it's the local Mexican American kids coming through that academy. I mean, honestly, when I was watching the Galaxy the other day, and honestly, Jonathan Dos Santos came on, Chicharito came on. I was honestly more interested in Efrain Alvarez and how he was doing, and Julian Araujo, who, who's right now he's playing for the States, but it sounds like he's very much undecided. Now you've got there two really, really exceptional young talents that are teenagers. And I think if you kind of translate something like that into the Austin kind, I mean, I don't know the city that well. I've only been once, but if you translate something like that, like two really, really exciting Mexican American, bicultural, bilingual teenagers into your team that are genuinely good, then I don't know. I mean, you guys know better than me what kind of hype that would generate, not just amongst the Austin FC fans in general, but specifically the kind of Mexican community in the city.
That's a good point. I wanted to ask you about geography a little bit, and you mentioned this, but I think there's this impression in Austin that just because of where we are, and we're relatively close to Mexico, right, compared to most teams in the league.
Yeah,
that's going to be an appeal, and that's sort of an imperative to like find a Mexican player of note. I mean, does Austin have like a Is there an like at home appeal to Austin for your Mexican player or not?
That's an interesting question. I think that in general there's a appeal for MLS within, especially players. Well, but Mexican players everywhere. To be honest, there's an appeal. I think it's misunderstood. I think a lot of the time they look at Chicharito signing like getting $6 million a year, and they all want to get $6 million a year, or they want to get $3 million a year or whatever. They think it's just like, oh, we go there and we get loads of money, and then you look at the taxes, and there's a lot of other things that you have to factor in. So yeah, no, but I do think in general there's kind of just an awareness of the league's going in the right direction. There's more and more Mexican players there, and I mean that these players all speak to each other. Like Pulido, it's not the kind of most I don't know. I don't want to diss Kansas City, but he's not on paper the most exciting place to go in the world. But then you got Pulido, who's like kind of this kind of star, who kind of the way he dresses, he's like he's a kind of showy guy. He likes his music, he likes his fast cars, and and he likes the league, and that's kind of not surprised me, but he's settled down there really well. Now I think a city like Austin, I think everybody in Mexico and the Mexican players, they know that there's the Mexican community there as well. So I think more than the kind of physical distance, I think it's the fact that you can go there and you're going to be loved. You know what I mean? If you're a Mexican player who's well known, people are going to come out and see you. Don't get me wrong, some players don't like that. Some players would prefer to go where they're just not going to get bothered. But yeah, no, I think people in Mexico as well are I think they've sat up and taken notice. Not just talking about the players here, but like kind of the media as well. I mean, the stadium that's being built there in Austin, and I don't know, it's kind of like sometimes I feel like the Mexican media look up at kind of something like the project at Austin with a bit of, I don't know if jealous is the right word, because there's also a lot of good things going on in Mexico. It's not like, but just the way that you can kind of just like flick a switch almost and you've got a team. I think it kind of fascinates people in Mexico that 3 years ago there's no team, and I know Austin's got a long history of soccer teams, but they're kind of like from 0 to 100, and you've got a brand new stadium like LAFC, and it's like, and LAFC when they played in Leon, and I was there I think last February, March, I can't remember now, but February, and it was like, it's that kind of thing with MLS that all of a sudden there's like a couple of thousand LAFC fans, and they're singing, and they're like a Barra from Latin America. Like, you know what I mean? They're a legitimate kind of supporters group. They're not messing around. They're like, they're real. They're marching to the stadium. They're making noise. They're being respectful as well. And I think, it definitely gets picked up here in Mexico for sure. And yeah, no, I think Austin's an attractive location. Don't get me wrong, you get some players, and I did hear this a little bit about Moreno, that he would prefer someone like a Miami, a New York, or a Los Angeles. You're always going to get those players as well. They want to live there, but the reality is there's not that many clubs in those cities. So, I think once they kind of read up a little bit about Austin and the growth, and I think what it's become. I think I went there in like 2000, so no, 2002 or something like that. So I imagine it's like,
was that the last time you were here?
No. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a different world now.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So All right. I think that's a good place to stop. So, Tom, where can people find your work?
No, I'm on, I think best place probably Twitter, at Mexico World Cup, or
The best Twitter handle ever.
like, it was good that there is going to now be a World Cup in Mexico. That's definitely helped it. It's helped the long-term forecast for the Twitter, but yeah, and on ESPN FC, writing stuff about the Mexican national team and Liga MX. But yeah, thanks a lot, boys, for the invite, and good luck with the show and everything heading towards the first season. It should be exciting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So whenever traveling is a thing again, you got to get back up to Austin, and then I imagine the answer to this question is yes, but I've never been to Guadalajara. Is that worth a visit?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I'm actually in Mexico City now. I lived in Guadalajara like 10 years, but
okay.
I've been in Mexico City a year, but yeah, no, 100%. And I know not everybody's kind of big on on the CONCACAF Champions League, and sometimes on the Liga MX MLS, kind of doing more kind of games and all this kind of thing. But I tell you what, if you're like a real fan of these clubs, and especially these clubs, especially in the south of the United States, where you do get the chance to kind of go down and watch. I mean, imagine in 2 years if you guys are in Guadalajara watching the Chivas versus Austin in the Estadio Chivas, or you're in the Azteca watching Austin FC. I mean, I don't know. I think anytime you get a chance to visit Mexico, and especially supporting a club, then 100% do it, because I don't know. It's just a rich kind of football culture, and then the food's good as well.
Oh yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tom. This has been great.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Well, your love sank in just a little too late.
All right. We want to thank Tom Marshall one more time for joining us and sharing his knowledge. Jeremiah, the supporters group here in Austin are doing some really good work in the community. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's neat that we've got both Austin Anthem and Los Verdes doing some good work for nonprofits in a time when it's kind of hard to do. So I'll start by talking about Austin Anthem is raising money for the Flatwater Foundation. It's a foundation that was started in 2009 with the sole purpose of providing those diagnosed with cancer and their families access to therapy. So since that started, they've covered the cost of over $5 million worth of therapy for families in Central Texas. And Austin Anthem is through their store selling a cooler with a Grackle logo on it that with their store. Then the profits for that will go to the Flatwater Foundation. And then also they are collecting St. David's. Well, and all the health providers here in town have a program called Hero Care that they're doing. And so Austin Anthem is collecting cards, thank you cards for St. David's healthcare workers. So the way that works is people make their own card, fill it out, express their gratitude for the frontline workers at St. David's Healthcare, and then they can send them by email to together@austinanthem.org by Friday, October 9th, and they'll make sure that those get in the hands of the healthcare workers that have obviously been on the front lines of everything that's going on over the last 6 months. Los Verdes just completed a scarf sale in conjunction with the Plastics. They continue to take my money with cool new merch. That resulted in a donation of $1,700 to Out Youth, which is a group that supports LGBT youth in Austin. Again, a specific Austin-based charity. Los Verdes also has a Hispanic Heritage Month video series, which will feature local Hispanic artists, business owners, and politicians. One that's already out includes Councilmember Greg Casar, and he's the first one, and there are more to come. And it's kind of cool because the interviews are like both in English and Spanish. The Spanish parts have English subtitles. The English parts have Spanish subtitles. So it's a really cool celebration. That'll go in Hispanic Heritage Months last September 15th through October 15th.
All right. So we would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We also want to remind you to visit capitalcitysoccer.com. We will be back in 2 weeks with more Austin FC news. We're going to have another fun interview with Weston Applefeller, who is the Senior Director of Grounds for Austin FC. And we're going to talk to him about the pitch at McCalla Place and how they're going to get grass in there. So until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.